Hello and welcome to the Best and Worst Pictures podcast. I'm your host, Jake, and with me, as always, is my good co-host, Ian Mello.
That's
and
me.
Joining us, as per usual, is my other, significantly less good host, Mud. How you doing?
You know, I was doing fine until you said that.
What is this show, you might ask? Well, every week, the three of us idiots sit down and review a Best Picture winner over the past 100 years or so, and determine if it's one of the best or worst pictures as compared to the other ones. This week, we're discussing the third Best Picture winner ever, All Quiet on the Western Front. And to start us off, as per usual, Mud has collected some fun facts about the film, which Ian and I have not heard ahead of time. Mud, take it away.
Thank you, Jake. So, let's get right into it. Of course, All Quiet on the Western Front was released on April 21st, 1930. It was directed by Lewis Wellerman, whose other work includes Of Mice and Men with Lon Chaney Jr.
I think I might have seen that one.
Yeah, a very famous name on this show. He also directed the 1962 remake of Mutiny on the Bounty, the original film we will be watching for this podcast in a couple episodes.
Very true.
The most interesting thing that he directed was the original Ocean's 11 with Frank Sinatra.
That's dope.
Mhm.
Okay.
The movie itself has an 8 out of 10 on not Rotten Tomatoes, an 8
Rotten
out of 10
DB.
Shut up.
I got you.
An 8 out of 10 on IMDb, 98% Rotten Tomato critics, 89% audience score. It stars Lou Ayres, Louis Wolfheim, and John Ray. This is also the first Best Picture winner to be an adaptation, as both Wings and Broadway Melody were original concepts. This film also received bans in several countries, including Germany, for perceived anti-German messages.
Yep.
I should also mention this was during the 30s, which means it was Hitler and Goebbels who were the critics of this film, which means it's a good film.
That's true.
This film was banned in several other countries, including France, Italy, and Austria, some of which didn't lift the ban until the 60s and the 80s.
Yeah.
I should also preface with the version we were watching is considered incomplete.
Yep.
The original version of this film is 152 minutes, but all restored versions are only 133 minutes due to lost footage.
Yep.
Again,
Another lost footage film.
Yep, it was actually a huge undertaking by the Library of Congress in 2006 to restore this film. The film was a Universal picture, which is fun because we did the Universal Monsterthon. In fact, the producer on this film, Carl Laemmle Jr., may be a familiar name to you two because the next film he produced after this was Dracula.
Oh,
That's pretty dope.
The good one. Hey.
Both of them, actually. Both the 1931s. I believe he also did The Invisible Man and a few others that I did not write down because Dracula was the...
The big crux there.
Yep. Getting into the actors now, we have Lou Ayres. He's the main guy. He's also known for a series called Dr. Kildare, which he had 9 films in during the 30s and 40s. I don't know what it's about. I didn't click that far in. He was also nominated for Best Actor in 1948 for Johnny Belinda. Louis Wolfheim was also known for the 1920 Paramount version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Dope.
He wasn't in much after this, as he sadly passed away in 1931, only a year after this film's release. And finally, John Ray. I couldn't find much on him, but he was in a film called You Only Live Once, which I thought was funny.
It's a prequel to the James Bond
It's a prequel
movie.
to the James Bond film. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any connections between this film and Mary Pickford, which I was able to for the last 2 films, so I'll keep an eye out next time.
She's like a common cast member.
I gotta make this happen.
Understandable.
To close it out, this film beat 4 other films to win Best Picture, including The Big House, Disraeli, The Divorcee, and The Love Parade. It tied with The Big House for the most wins that year at 2. The Oscars at this point were only giving out 8 awards. And my last fun fact is Beryl Mercer is in this film. She's an actress. She's actually a recast after the film was completed. Her role was originally given to Zazu Pitts, who was a famous comedian. And when they did a test screening of the film with her in it, the audience was so used to her being a comedian that they laughed. And they couldn't stop laughing when she was on screen.
Well, this is a serious war movie.
So they reshot her parts, which is about 30 seconds of film, and she's in the original trailer. But those test screen audiences are the only people to have seen Zazu Pitts in the film.
That's insane.
That just about wraps it up.
I do want to point out one other thing. The last 2 Oscar winners, I believe, didn't have any other wins. This is the first one that has multiple wins.
I think so. No, Wings had another win.
Did it?
Yes, it was Best Production Design.
Okay.
Yep. It had a...
Because I know
for
this
that,
one Best Director?
This one Best Director,
Okay.
yes. Wings had 2 nominations and 2 wins, which means the first Best Picture ever had a 100% win rate.
Nice. Good stuff.
It was, hang on, I have it here. It was known then as effects engineering. Today we know it as visual effects.
Yep.
Nice.
That's for Wings, though.
Good stuff.
Well deserved.
All Quiet on the Western Front, I think, was also nominated for writing and cinematography, but didn't win in those categories. So it's a 50% win rate.
I am particularly excited for this one because there are a lot of Best Picture winners that have kind of been lost to time and no one really talks about or cares about as much anymore. I would argue Broadway Melody is one of them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, 100%.
100%. I didn't know
people,
anything about it.
like, in this day and age, will still reference this movie is fantastic.
Well, don't forget, they also made another movie. The book is very, very well regarded.
The point is, overall, All
Yeah.
Quiet on the Western Front has stayed in the popular zeitgeist.
Right.
Nearly.
It possibly could also be because of the saying, all's quiet on the Western Front, basically meaning nothing's going on over here.
Yep.
Exactly. But
Whoever has seen it that I know has never said it's bad or even underwhelming. They all say it's great. So I'm really excited what we're going to
I'm
watch.
also excited. Granted, it's a little bit lengthy, and I'm not super into war movies, but at the same time, this is before the big war movie boom of big, dumb America. You know what I mean?
Yep.
This is World War I. This is pre-World War II war film.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
crazy to think about.
This is back when it was still known as the Great War.
Yeah.
Yeah, the war to end all wars.
I think it's time we get into it. So we will see you after we've watched All Quiet on the Western Front.
And we are back. The third Best Picture movie, All Quiet on the Western Front. And what did you guys think?
I think that was a very good film, actually. I'm feeling good. I'm
feeling pretty good about it as well.
Also feeling really good.
like to contrast it with what we watched last week. Broadway Melody. By the time we finished, we were in a state of decay.
Yeah, we weren't enjoying ourselves. And honestly, this week the movie was longer, I believe, right?
It was longer,
It was
absolutely
and
longer.
it felt shorter and more enjoyable.
I will say it did crawl towards the end.
Yes,
but that
there's
was
a
the
lot of
last 25 minutes.
There's a lot of stuff towards the end that feels very superfluous.
Mm-hmm.
The end of this movie is just superfluous. But at the same time,
I wouldn't say the exact end, but like stuff leading.
yeah,
up to
stuff
it.
leading towards the end.
So-
like when he goes back home, there's a couple of little
No,
parts.
I will
There's
fight
a couple
you on
of little
that.
parts in those moments where he's like, I have to go home. We're like, where it's like,
We'll-
whatever.
We'll talk
But-
about that. I feel
Let's
like
get
Jake's got
into
some
it.
thoughts.
Actually, I really want to get into it first.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
Lead the way.
we're all going to rate it positively, like out of 10.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do want to get into something that at least I feel a little negatively on.
50% of this movie is explosions and warfare and death and chaos. The movie didn't really go into who the characters are other than the main character and, like, motivations. And I didn't really have much reason to invest myself other than, oh, they're all going to die. Let's all hope they live.
Well, that's Dawson. He's gonna write a book.
Dawson's going to write a book, yeah. So,
So-
like, aside from the main character who has, like, an awesome arc, and I love that main
Yep.
character.
Yeah,
I
Paul.
feel like his entire group of, like, classmates who should have been, like, the backbone of, like, the supporting story kind of just are one note.
I want to contrast you on this because
Okay.
I'm really happy that they didn't focus on every one of those little characters because it shows that in war nobody's safe at all. Like it was just everyone around him that just died.
Oh, no, I get
I
that.
felt like it would have felt a little superfluous to have all these characters have these influential, beautiful, big stories. I would have liked a little bit of more of camaraderie than them just being scared together. But at the same, I see where you're coming
That's
from.
part of it, is the lack of
I
camaraderie.
I will contrast you and say I didn't think there was that lack of camaraderie. I made a note here actually to get right into my notes. One of my favorite shots in this film is very early on. We see them in like a bunker under the trenches, and there's some explosions, and they get called to battle, and it's a wide shot, and I'd say there's 10 plus, 15 plus guys in there. Later on in the film, we return to that same bunker.
like
There's
8.
6 of them.
Yep.
I liked that.
Yeah.
Just showing how the herd's thinning.
Yeah.
This film is about a company of soldiers that gets destroyed.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying. I do agree to some extent that not showing every single soldier, well, not every single soldier, but several soldiers in the squad more definitely lessens the impact as you see the herd thin until there's no one from the platoon left. However, I still think the movie punches through that to deliver an emotional story about that, where you see at first like they're kind of nonchalant about it. Well, at first they're actually grief stricken whenever they lose
It
one
goes
person.
from trauma to nonchalant, And then once it's like down towards the end, it's trauma again.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it goes from being an everyday occurrence to, oh, whatever, we lost 3 guys, to there's only 6 of us left. If we lose somebody now, it's going to be someone I trust, someone I love.
Absolutely. And like you look at like Paul's character, and I really only have praise for Paul's character.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
Like the way he has his journey and his arc set up, and the way he has those like valleys and peaks and stuff. And it's gonna sound like an insult, but it's a compliment. He's very bland, and what that does is that lets him easily be affected by these horrible traumatic incidents, like when he's stuck in that fucking ditch with that guy who's just
dying
dead,
man.
and he's just rambling on, monologuing about like, oh fuck, you know, we're gonna make it out of this, and then
We're
he
gonna be
realizes we're
friends.
not. We're gonna be friends and stuff.
Yeah,
and then
you're my comrade.
and then he's like, it dawns on him, even though he kind of realizes at that point, like it starts to like slowly hit him, and then when it hits him, he like lashes out, and he's losing it.
See, I think it's important that Paul isn't really a strong character in any direction. He's not a nerd. He's not a jock. You know, he doesn't really have an archetype that you can assign to him.
He embodies any person.
Exactly.
Because
It's
any
like,
person can be in
this is
situation.
what happens when you are drafted and you are sent
Yep.
to war, and this is
Exactly.
what will become of you.
That's what's so strong, and that's probably why it got all the praise that it did, was how great of a character he is and how he carries this whole movie.
100%.
He is a character in the sense that he is a blank slate. I don't really know much about him beyond, basic facts, but I can empathize and relate to him because I'm like, holy shit,
Yeah.
this
Yep.
is what I would be like if I was in his situation. I'd be the one crying in the trench like he is,
Yep, we
next
all
to the
would.
guy I just killed, realizing I just took a life.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It has a lot of the same themes. I want to get into this. It has a lot of themes that every war movie has. Well, not every war movie, but a lot of the good ones have, where it talks about innocence, naivety, war tearing people apart.
Oh,
And in this movie, you see Paul go from the innocent, young, dumb school kid, and then
The
at the end of
idealist.
the movie, he goes back to the school and has a fantastic speech. And the
Ooh.
speeches in this movie all slap, for one. That opening speech by the professor was fantastic.
Pumps you up.
The speech by the mailman when he gets there, they're like, oh, making fun of him because he's a mailman. And he hammers into them. He's just like, I am the leader. This is what's going to happen. We're going to keep going. What's this?
Yeah.
He goes.
Yeah.
Even the more
goes.
casual conversations, like when they're talking about, well, who started the war anyways?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I think my favorite line was something like, up until like last month, I'd never seen a Briton or a British man. And you know what? I bet until last month they hadn't seen a German.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And the line about like, oh, well, next time there's a war, let's fence off a field and have all the kings and the generals and their cabinet members go fight in their underwear.
Right, and what I really, really like about those wartime conversations aren't necessarily the conversations themselves, but when this movie came out, 1930? 1930,
Right?
I think it was just 30.
Okay.
1930, this movie came out like tail end of World War One. World War II is
No, do not say tail end. That's over
Yeah,
a
10
decade
years
after the.
after.
okay, so 10 years post tail end,
Yeah.
but it's still like pre World War II, I believe.
Absolutely.
So-
World War II didn't start till 1939.
Right. So for all intents and purposes, that was the Great War. It's
Yeah.
not World War One. It's just the World
Great
War.
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 Yeah. So
The war to end all wars.
right.
Yep.
So seeing this movie with those conversations about like, oh, this is what this was, this is what this is what it does, in relative to a war that they believe is like the biggest war yet, and will probably
Will
stay
ever
that
be.
way. Yeah, we'll probably stay that way for a long time. Contrast that with actual history. Wow, fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
It's brutal. It's honestly devastating.
It
'Cause
is.
World War II is absolutely the more.
Worse.
Yeah, absolutely worse.
Absolutely worth it. It's
It's
terrible.
crazy.
Man, after this war, there won't be a lot of war for a long time.
Yeah.
Less than 20 years later.
Yeah, and it's funny because the period in which
Exactly.
this takes place, and also the period in which the movie was released, neither of them had that context of World War II.
It was right in that perfect lull.
Yep.
It was far enough removed from World War One, but it was
not quite
before.
into when Germany was getting
It
their
was not quite into the build up to World War II because
Yep.
the build up to World War II is most of the 30s.
Yep.
Like by like 36, 37, everyone knew there was going to be a war. The question was when.
It's also really fascinating to see a World War movie where Germany isn't the bad guy, because they're not Nazis
they're
at this
the
point.
main characters.
Yeah, the main characters are
Yeah.
Krauts.
Yeah, they're all German.
And they're really sympathetic.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough because history is told from the perspective of the victor.
Yep.
And this is 10 years after World War One, and they didn't win.
They didn't.
Like, it's incredible how we're supposed to sympathize with what we and as Americans, because this is an American film, and how we're supposed to see the quote unquote bad guys to our country in this movie. And I'm just sitting here like, man, I feel fucking terrible for these people.
It's funny because, like, in a way, like, when you discuss world wars, and you discuss Germans being the bad guys, I think because of the overarching shadow of the Nazi Party and the Third Reich in World War II, to a lot of people, it can almost seem strange to remember that while the Germans were the bad guys of World War
A lot of
I,
the Germans were also the victims.
they were not
Yeah.
Nazis,
Oh, yeah.
who are objectively a worse people.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the Nazi Party is from Germany, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But it's just like, it's that weird disconnect that I need to keep reminding myself of. Even in Wings, when we were watching it and the Iron Cross would pop up, I'd be like, oh shit, Nazis. Nope, not Nazis, just Germans.
Still not. Yep.
Just Germans. Still bad. Not that bad.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
Just people who are stuck in this war just like me, you know? So it's interesting to now see a film from the Nazis' from the Germans' perspective in World War I. And it's interesting in my brain as an American here in the 21st century who has really been bombarded in most of their life with World War II imagery and not World War I imagery.
Yep.
To have to remind myself, while the Germans, from our perspective, were the bad guys of World War I, they were our enemy. They are not the same enemy as the Nazi Party
No.
in World War II.
A lot of Germans were either victims themselves or bystanders.
Exactly.
Yep. And I
And
really,
some of them didn't even know what was going on.
That happens in this movie.
I really do appreciate how this movie, when you really look at it, it's not criticizing Germans going to war. It's criticizing the concept of war.
What
Yeah.
was there was a statement at the top of this movie. I'm going to look it up because it backs up exactly what you're saying. It
War
was-
is war.
In that sense, I would also kind of say that they're not portrayed as Germans. They're portrayed as just people who
Yeah.
are
Exactly.
signing up.
Yep.
You know,
It doesn't
like
specify.
it took
us really
I
good.
mean, they're portrayed as so just people like that. I think Jake, you didn't know they were Germans for like the first
I didn't.
Sorry,
figure it out for a little bit.
Ian didn't
Yeah.
know they were Germans for like the first
half hour.
half
It
hour.
was like 20-ish minutes. or
20
so,
minutes.
but-
By that same token, they really could have set this movie from either side's perspective.
Well, to be fair, the book is a German book.
Yes.
yeah, okay.
And it's written by a German World War I veteran.
Was the book also critical of the war, or did they change that?
I'm pretty sure it was also critical of the war. It was
Yeah.
up. So I'm on the Wikipedia page for All Quiet on the Western Front. The book and its sequel, The Road Back, were among the books banned and burned by Nazi Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So, like, I think I remember saying in my Wings review that I really appreciated how it actually criticized the idea of, like, American is so great-ism, of, like, when Jack and David go to war on accident with each other because they're so caught up in their things, and one's trying to escape the other, but he's just, oh, I'm going to skin my buddy. I'm going to skin David right off the scalp. He blows out
I'm
of
going
the
to
sky.
scalp this guy to revenge
Scalp him.
David.
Yep, revenge
Yeah,
David.
he gets out of the plane with a big old smile on his
Yeah, with a
face
big
and
knife in
and
his
a big
hand.
butcher's knife in his
Yeah.
hand.
It's like that to me, anyway. I might be overinterpreting it, but like that to me is the director of the movie trying to say that, yeah, this is what war funk, that mindset gets you to, where you're just killing your friends because you don't even fucking realize. And to me, I really appreciated. I said this in the review. I appreciated how that criticized that idea.
Yeah.
But this one takes it like 10
To a
more
whole nother
steps
level.
further, and I really love that. I love how like this
that
is just.
speech that he makes at the end of the movie when
So-
he's in the classroom with the
Oh,
kid.
I love.
Oh my
It
God.
is phenomenal.
And he's criticizing the professor for trying to hype up all these students to go and die
Yep.
when they can't. And then one of the students is like, "You're a coward," and he's like, "You don't know what you're fucking
Right.
talking about."
Dude,
the
yeah.
professor even said no.
Yeah, no, I made a
Yeah.
note when that first classroom scene happened where I was like, oh, wow, I like the dichotomy of how the professor's like amping him up, like, hell yeah. And then the drill sergeant, the next scene is like, no, I think
You're
the
meat.
quote was, you're not special, you're a weapon in our arsenal, you're
Mm-hmm.
just good here to die or something like that.
Yep.
But that, I was like, wow, I appreciate the dichotomy. I was a fool because the real dichotomy is when he comes back to the classroom
Yep.
at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And he's
And-
like, no, this is
and
all
the
fucking
professor's
bullshit.
giving the same speeches.
Yep.
So, real quick, I did find what I think is a version of the title card that opens this movie. It's from the book. So I just want to read it real quick because I think it's a thesis statement for the film.
Mm-hmm.
This book is to be neither an accusation nor a confession, and least of all, an adventure. For death is not an adventure to those who stand face to face with it. It will try simply to tell of a generation of men who, even though they may have escaped its shells, were destroyed by the war.
Yep. That is the title card from the beginning of the movie, but instead of book,
Yeah.
it says movie.
Yep.
Yeah, this film or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, dude, this movie has so much amazing theme work. Such a real dark, gritty portrayal of the war and how actually terrifying it was.
Yeah.
Like this, I don't think a movie like this would be even a thing right now. Like
I'm thinking of like
maybe. But like 1917, it wasn't as dark and gritty. As
no,
this.
because 1917 was different context though. That's two guys on a mission.
Yeah.
This is just
This is just
is just the front.
Yeah.
This is just guys living on the front. You know, I really can't think of them. A lot of war movies nowadays are biopics about soldiers, battles, or have something else going on. This movie is really just these guys hanging out on the front. If I can make a strange comparison, but please follow me on this, it's kind of like MASH, but way better in the sense that it is about living in the absurdity of the war, but it's compelling and interesting.
It's not a comedy.
Yeah, it's not a comedy. It's a tragedy. But you get what I'm saying,
No, I
right?
get
It's like the strangeness of living on the front line, where 1 minute you and your buddies are stealing a pig to eat because you haven't eaten in a day and a half.
The next minute, your friend has no leg.
And then in the next, Braun's running around in the night with his eyes blown off.
Yep. Dude, this movie's graphic.
Yep.
There was that scene where the dude exploded. It was just hands.
I wrote a note and it just says "just hands" in all caps.
Yep. Hands.
Yep. I wrote that guy was just hands. I think we all had the same note with the
We
same
all wrote
pieces.
the exact
Like,
same note.
It is insane.
Yep.
How graphic and violent and terrifying this movie is.
And you know
Oh my
what's funny
And it
too?
shows the real plight of the war. You're not gonna. You feel like you're there,
Yeah.
honestly. And I know that's a cop out. Like, oh, I feel like I'm actually there. Like people say that all the time for shit. But like this has those graphic elements, and what they did with the sets and how they did use them with the explosions felt so real and visceral.
Yeah. To expand on that point too, I mentioned earlier how like half of the movie is basically just a big war, and that was a criticism. But I love the depiction of the war. It feels so visceral and like ugly. And I think one of the things really going for the movie is the fact that it's in black and white. At nighttime, those war scenes have like a strong tinge of like horror to them.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
When you just see the muzzle flashes in the distance and everyone just drops.
Right.
You're like,
And a lot of that
"Jesus
is what's
fucking Christ."
actually happening. Like the character, like the eyes getting blown off and he runs into the machine gun right after. It's like, oh my God.
That is
Yeah, it's
terrifying.
fucked up.
Dude.
Yeah. I do want to build off your criticism though, Jay. There are whole sequences in this film where it's just guys running back and forth and it's B-roll of people running back and forth and it is so overbearingly loud.
Oh,
It's
let's talk about
just
sound
you
design.
hear like the irritating sounds too, which is obvious because war makes irritating
Yeah,
noise.
that's
But,
one of the
like,
things that enhances making you feel like you're there.
The whistling, the high-pitched whistling of those mortar shells just crashing down. And it would have been fine if the sound mixing was any good, because the sound mixing in this film is ass.
Yeah, it's crispy. It's like deep fried meme level.
You're
It's
right.
pretty bad.
It's overblown. It might have just been we had the volume up a little too high.
No, I think it was
But
overblown.
I
'cause
don't
it
think
sounded
so.
like it was peaking.
Because we also turned the volume down at one point. We were like, this is too loud. But like also just the sound design, it felt like a movie. Like it felt unnatural sometimes, where you'd hear like machine gun fire and like stuff exploding, and then all of it would cut out to let the mortar sound effect come through, and then the machine gun fire would start, and it's like, did it stop?
Yeah.
Did they like wait for the mortar to hit? You know?
Yeah,
It-
exactly.
It sounded like stock sound effects being played, and like it was like, oh, this sound effects loop ran out.
It wasn't
Give a
blended properly.
Exactly. Yeah, the sound design could have definitely taken another pass. I know I'm using very like modern terms. I'm sure in 1930 it was very hard to do.
The dude on the gramophone needed to take another listen.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, I
Dude,
watched
dude with the arm crank probably got tired, and they were like, "Look, this is the best we're gonna get. This movie's 3 hours long."
This is actually kind of relevant, but I mentioned to you the other day I watched Chaplin, the Downey Jr. movie.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where like they're watching the take and they're like, "Oh, I want to edit that part." They pause it, take off the reel the film back up, bring it to another room, cut up, like go through the entire thing, use their teeth to like rip off the footage and then cut off footage again and then like tape the new thing back on and then reel it all back and play it again.
It's just it's
Dude.
primal.
And then I have Final Cut Pro. I go Command B. It's cut.
I have Premiere, Command C, click, delete,
Delete. You're done.
Yep.
ripple, delete.
Exactly.
2 clicks and 3 button presses, and you did everything they did in 3. It took them 45 minutes. It takes us 12 seconds.
It probably took them close. Like in the movie, it took about a minute of scene, but it probably took them 10 full minutes
Yeah.
per
Because you had
cut.
to find the,
You gotta run through the whole fucking thing.
and you
to
got to
find it.
decide how many frames you're cutting.
Yeah, and that's just visual. That's not even sound.
Oh my
Like,
god.
oh Jesus.
So I'm obviously getting credit for that. They were masterpieces on this film.
Oh my god.
But like, there's a lot of bad sound design. Everything in the film peaks audio all at once, and it's like, oh my god.
Gives you a headache.
Yeah,
Well, it wouldn't
100%.
even be that bad if, like, my main criticism of, like, half of this movie weren't just a big, huge war.
Yeah, it is half the movie that.
I mean, war is war.
War is
War
war.
is
Which
war.
is what they say, and it's really funny.
It's funny, but like they're making fun of. So the first time it's used, they're making fun of the mailman for. He's like, I'm getting my officer's uniform, and blah, 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 I'm the mailman. And they go, oh, you're fucking mailman. And the other dude's like, no, war is war. He's to answering the Call of Duty. You're not.
Well, no, then
Like-
the guy's like, oh, I'll probably sign up in a couple months if it's
Yeah.
if it's still on.
And he's like, war is war, dude. I'm proud of him for doing like.
Yeah.
He has guts, and you're
Yeah.
criticizing him.
There's a line to walk between like I respect these men for enlisting, and then there's what the professor does, which is just rile up these
Manipulate
men
kids.
with just blind patriotism.
Yep.
They'll be like, you're gonna serve your country and you're gonna do great and you'll be loved by the fatherland. And it's like, nope, you're gonna go shovel shit on the front line and then put up barbed wire at 1 a.m. under gunfire.
And die.
It's really weird, too, because the professor isn't like a con man. He believes what he's saying.
That's-
you
that's what the movie's
blind
saying, though.
Patriotism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blind faith.
Being
and
It's a
how
movie.
how it hurts others.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, this is the right thing to do. Like, well, maybe it isn't in certain situations. Fucking like, depending on the circumstances, maybe everyone should not just immediately enlist and fight in a war.
Yeah,
You know, like, oh my god,
it's
mean-
a tale as old as time.
Yep.
a song as old as rhyme, if you will.
Beauty and the Quiet on the Western Front.
It's all about war, man. War is one of the oldest human jobs besides prostitution.
Prostitution, war,
Prostitution, warrior, farmer.
hunting. I'd say hunting is up there.
Yeah.
It's like primal job.
honestly, this movie did a fantastic job with its theming.
Mhm.
I had a lot of criticisms with a lot of the shots go on a little bit too long. I said, and I quote, there are too many shots of them just eating.
Yeah, they ate a lot in this film.
Like, they were always like, oh, I'm hungry, I haven't eaten, but there's a lot of shots of them eating.
It's like a mafia movie.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like, I feel like when there's more dudes, it cuts to every guy, which is really, really weird because they don't do anything with the guys. They just fucking die. But there are a couple of really, really interesting scenes. That scene at the end that's right there, that image.
The comped over shot of the 2nd Battalion marching
It's-
off, and they all keep looking over their
It's
shoulder.
that first scene of where they get off to go lay barbed wire at 1 a.m.
Yep.
And they look back into the fog and the car's gone. That is haunting.
Oh,
This movie
there's
has
some
such
haunting
good
imagery.
Haunting imagery.
There's some good haunting imagery. Let me. Can
The-
I?
The scene where that dude's dead and he's just like stroking him and fucking all this shit. This movie is terrifying. It's haunting. It's just ghastly.
Can I jump in?
Yes,
with some
sir.
haunting imagery. There's a lot of shots of them like just off the front lines where you just see like there's smoke and there's like a dead tree and you just see like a squadron of horses run by and you can't even make out their faces. They're just black silhouettes in the night. That shit is terrifying.
That adds a lot. This movie is very good.
There's some really good shots in this film. You know, all the shots in the trench when he's with the dying man. Also, props to that dude. There's only one shot where he's acting very poorly as a corpse.
Yeah.
There's one wide shot where you can very clearly see that he's breathing. Other than that, though,
He's pretty good. Yeah.
he's amazing.
Mhm.
He is stiff as a board.
The acting in this movie is really, really good. I'm not even gonna fault it. I
Oh
think
my
it's
God.
super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. But what really grabbed me, just to talk about general shots, there's one shot right at the beginning of this film that's beautiful. I mean, the opening shot. They're
Yep.
inside a building
Yeah,
and these
yeah.
guys are cleaning a floor. They open the doors and the camera just moves through the doorway.
Mm-hmm.
I that's the kind of shot where I'm like, that's fantastic. That's gripping. That's movement.
Towards the end, when him and Stanislaus are both walking.
Oh, and the
and it
camera's
goes
moving
to the
backwards
shaky cam of them
because they're
walking,
moving
like-
backwards. Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
that was good.
It's awesome. There are a couple of really nice modern looking shots in this movie.
I liked the shot when Paul's hiding in the trench and he's looking up, and you just see all these these soldiers jumping over
Oh,
the camera
feet. Yep.
because it's his perspective. He's
Yep.
watching them go over him, and then one of them looks down and he just grabs him.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to talk about the cultural mindset too, because there is a certain sequence where that guy, I forget his name, but the guy who lost his legs and the guy lied to him about the
Oh,
legs not being-
Albert.
Albert, yeah.
Yep.
Albert
So-
lost his legs, and I think it was what was the guy's name? Stannis?
No. Stanislaus wasn't there. It was a mustache man who kept inappropriately touching nurses.
Ah,
He lost his legs and the guy wouldn't he basically
didn't
lied to
tell
him.
him.
He said, "Oh no, your legs are fine. You got two, right? Haha." And then when he found out that his legs weren't there, I have the quote. I wrote it down. He said, "I won't be a cripple. I'll kill myself the first chance I get." That's
It was
fucking
fucked
haunting.
up.
Holy shit. Like as far as like what this guy's like mentality is, like he would rather be a dead being than not
well, if I
be
can
able to walk.
fire in, a lot of jobs in the 30s were physically intensive.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
you know,
true.
it's not like he's like, oh, I don't have a leg. I guess I'll just go get an office job,
Yeah.
somewhere that doesn't require me to be on my feet all day. There are no
Exactly.
office. Well, there are office jobs, but you get what I mean.
Very
Yeah.
limited resources. He's probably just gonna go broke and just.
He's probably, this is a time where kids didn't leave the town that they were raised in. He's going to go back to being a farmer or to being a crop. That is what
crop.
farming is. Sorry. Or, what I meant was like a livestock farmer or a smith. This is still 1914, 1915, 1916. This is
Yeah.
not a time of, it's post-industrial revolution, sure, but even then there was still a lot of
Yeah.
labor-intensive jobs. You didn't see the transition from labor-intensive jobs till the 50s and the 60s when
Yep.
automation began.
Right, where you can actually do things while sitting down in a chair for the rest
Yeah.
of your life.
Sure, we had the assembly line, but that was still all man-made. We
Yeah.
didn't have robots on the assembly line building the car. We had men on the assembly line building the cars.
Mhm.
Yep.
So a labor-intensive job, if you can't stand all day, if you have a condition like, missing a leg, and who knows, maybe it becomes tough for you to stand and walk all day because
Yep.
the stump doesn't feel good when
Yeah.
you're putting pressure on it all day. You can't work.
Yeah, that mentality that he was in of just like, I would rather just die. Honestly, based on the conditions and context, I don't even fucking put it past him, because what is he gonna do? Like, what else? He can't go back in the army, obviously. He can't go back home. He can't do anything.
He can go back home. He just won't. He can't live a life
Well, who would take care of his parents? Would just have to like have him like in their house all the
until
time
his parents pass away.
until his parents. And then what happens? Because he's gonna be like an old man. with
Yeah,
no
and this
one.
is a time where the men were supporting the wives. So.
There's no wife in the world, if he doesn't have one already, that would like get with him in this time period.
But that's what it is.
There's
It's
a lot
like
of cultural stigma against
cripples.
Huge
disabled.
stigma.
Yeah.
Huge stigma against cripples.
Yeah. He says, "I won't be a cripple," as if like being that kind of person is like
The
evil.
worst thing on the planet.
It's funny because fast forward to today, I know someone whose dad doesn't have a leg. He lost his leg as a child to a disease. He's had a prosthetic leg all his life, and guess what? He lives a fine life. He owns a house. He has a wife. He has kids.
Yep.
Right, but he can also walk, which if you have no legs, that's not.
Yeah, well, they did say they'd get him an artificial leg, but like I still know that he has like it's not all fine and dandy. It's not just he has
Yeah,
half
I'm
a
not
leg.
undercutting that at all. I'm sorry.
But that's what I was saying about Albert is like I don't know what kind of complications he would have
Yeah.
with a prosthetic leg. I don't know where the cut is. I don't know how much of the leg he has left, and we're talking a 1910s prosthetic leg. That's probably
And 1910 surgery.
It's just a hunk of wood tied to
that's
your
what I
leg.
was about to say. It is a hunk of wood carved to look like a foot.
Yeah, that's
That
it.
is his
The
prosthetic.
best they can do.
It's not like nowadays where it's like this nice plastic and
Mm-hmm.
metal that's like reinforced in comfort and will like
flexible.
flexible and sits and will have like a nice like padding to make sure that your stump isn't like
Mm-hmm.
irritated sitting in it, and you've also got bandaging around it, and like you go to your doctor and they're like, yep, your stump looks great.
Yeah, let's clean the infections if we have to. That guy's just gonna probably die.
That's what I'm saying.
The Albert, yeah.
because like just losing a limb, that's not something that just kind of happens
No.
to people.
No.
It's a life-changing
It
event.
is a life-changing event.
Even now in modern medicine, it's so life-changing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, granted, I've never lost a limb, but I still understand that like I'm not just gonna slap a piece of like plastic on my leg
Right.
and just keep on trucking,
Right. Like, it's such an integral part of your life that you don't even realize how much you value it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was one of my last notes. I have a few more.
Oh, I got
okay.
plenty more to talk
I
about.
want to
Let's
talk
get
about
it.
the best scene in the movie.
Which one?
Is when he is in the trenches. We've touched on it, but he is having a psychotic fucking breakdown.
Yep.
And that is the best scene in the movie.
Mm.
Best acted, most powerful, and it lasts a perfect amount of time. He's like, okay, here's the deal. Fuck you. Wait, no, I have to help you. Fuck. And he freaks the fuck out. He's like, I would have done it. I wouldn't do it again, though. Like, if you jump down here again, I wouldn't have stabbed you this time. It would have been fine. We could be friends. Well, you'll get out of here before me. It'll be perfect. You're probably better off dead anyway. It's fine. Like, he pictured himself in that situation. It could have easily have been the opposite way around.
Yeah. I think one of the best comics I've ever seen on the internet was just this single panel thing where it was two soldiers on opposing sides of the trenches. Both had their guns raised at the other. And there was one thought bubble in the middle, and both of them were thinking it. And it was, I don't want to kill him, but he's going to kill me.
Yep.
And that's what it is. Out on the field, you aren't thinking, oh, hang on, let's stop, let's pause, because we're both afraid. It's no, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. It's kill or be killed.
Yep.
It's visceral. It's downright inhumane.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. Like, this film does not pull punches.
No.
You know, it shows like just how brutal it can be. He spends a day, a night, and a day with this guy in the trench, and he's dead for most of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't even imagine spending 36 hours with a corpse that I killed. And like, something that really struck me in this film, and I don't know what it was, maybe it was just the lighting because it's a black and white film, but like, God, it was haunting to look at that.
No, I think that's the intention.
That's a corpse, because like, I have this mindset of like, I don't know what it was, but I was thinking, I'm like, I feel like he could just get up. I feel like he could move at me, and I can't even imagine how unearthly it must feel to be sitting next to a body, but understand that there's no one in that body, in a sense. Like,
Yep.
it's just a husk,
Mhm.
you know, because we don't spend a lot of time near dead bodies, but like, can you imagine that? Like, you know, your level of interaction with a human being is always that they're moving or they're talking, and the only time you see a dead body is in specific situations, at a funeral or a wake. There are certain expectations. They're in a coffin, eyes closed, dressed
Yep.
in a nice suit, surrounded by flowers. You know, you go in there with some mental fortitude, knowing I'm about to see a dead person. But just laying down in a shithole dirt pocket that's been bombed to hell, and just laying across from a body that's just not moving, I can't even imagine. I'd just be staring at it, just waiting for it to move, waiting for him to say something, waiting for him to blink or to breathe or look at me, because my brain can't comprehend that person is dead.
And depending how long you dwell on that, that could form the genesis of certain elements of PTSD when you come back.
Yeah.
It's somewhat like, and I'm gonna bring this up, personal experience. It's like being in a hospital room with somebody when they're dying, and you not knowing like the exact moment. Because if they're in the hospital bed, they're barely breathing. You know what I mean? Like, you can't physically see. You don't notice when people are breathing.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of just a thing that happens, and you don't know, and the whole time you're wondering, like, is it now? When will it be? It's like that painstaking moment.
Every
And
second is eternity.
Every second is you potentially having that last moment of your loved one being alive. And in this situation, he was the cause of that man's death. He was waiting on, when does this dude die because of me? He's the direct cause. And that weighed, I think that weighed down a lot on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was saying during that scene, like, just kill him. Just have mercy on him. Like,
Because
he is just-
Paul let him bleed out.
Paul let him bleed out for hours. Presumably
No,
hours.
he died within a couple minutes, but then they stayed in there for
Yeah.
hours.
And then you see the progression, because the Paul that comes back and yells at the professor, that Paul would kill him instantly and let him mercy kill.
Mm-hmm.
You get, like, that Paul has gone through his entire arc at that, or almost his entire arc at that point, and that Paul is a changed man. I feel like every one or two scenes, the character of Paul would do something different in that trench, which
Yeah.
is really fascinating to think about.
It's realistic too, because
Yep.
at the end of the day, it's war is war. It's what it is.
War is war.
And
It's the thesis of today.
like, it changes people.
it does.
You know, physically it can change people. I know my grandfather, after he came back, he was in Korea, had hearing problems.
Mm.
And my cousin's husband, who was in Iraq, had nightmares for a long time that it took him a long time to get over.
Mm.
Some people don't get over those, and
Yeah.
it's different in everybody. It's tough. Like, it is some of the scariest, most visceral thing. Not a lot of people are in life and death, quote quote, murder situations where it's murder. Like, regardless, it's not criminal because it's for
Taking
a
another
cause.
life is murder, no matter which way you
Yes.
slice
Yep.
it. Maybe not in the legal concept, but just in the
Yep.
idea of
Yep.
you have taken a life. That's homicide.
And it's not a lot of people get to do, like, not get to do that. That sounds like it's a fun experience.
Rite of passage, stab
Not-
somebody.
Not a lot of people experience that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more than it should be, and a lot more than you'd think. No one in this room has, or hopefully will be, in a situation like that. So we won't know how that feels, how that mental toll is. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I can only imagine it, and imagining it's like, Jesus Christ, I don't know if I could. Like,
Yeah.
I do not know.
There's a certain, like, disconnect that after you kind of first do something like that, usually the thing is like you're irrevocably changed is how I've heard it described to me.
Yep.
Is that like something's triggered in you that can't be undone.
Yep.
Or at the very least it's very difficult to undo. Like you're changed now. And you see that a lot portrayed in a lot of movies about war and what it can do to people, usually like playing up the PTSD. This one just plays up the horrors of war in general, not necessarily focusing on PTSD, but this is a strong element in this. And fuck, like it's so powerful here, the way it's done.
This movie is powerful throughout. I get what you're saying though. Like this movie is just, it delivers on its thesis statement of this isn't an adventure, this isn't a confession, this isn't anything other than this is what war is. Take it as you will, interpret it how you will. This is what we experienced.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like this is probably going to be weird because I've never seen it. I feel like I'd want to watch this and then watch They Shall Not Grow Old.
Ooh, that'd be a great
Double
back-to-back.
pairing.
Yeah.
You know, just
Double
because I
feature.
feel like they kind of aim for the same thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just that idea of just war is war. I know we keep saying it and it's a meme, but it's a real statement. That being said, I think there were some technical issues with this film, just to completely change gears.
Yeah. We can talk about technical issues, and we can talk about a couple scenes I didn't like too.
Yeah.
I know one.
There's a whole sequence in this film that I was not a fan
I
of.
think it's the same one.
But I want to jump in. Something I noticed. There's a shot. I'd say probably a third into the film, somewhere between a third and halfway through, where it's a battle, and it's down and dirty trench warfare. You've got the Frenchies coming over the top and just face to face with our boys, and our boys being the Germans.
Yep.
And it's sped up footage,
Yeah, it is.
and it's not good.
No.
It's tough because I get back in the day, in the 30s and the 40s, you guys have said this to me because I was a little lost during the Monster-thon. Sped up footage is supposed to increase the
Take
tension.
action. Yep.
Yeah, increase the tension, increase the action, make it seem cool. Nowadays, sped up footage is comedic.
It's comedic because our eyes are so trained with, how very common and simple editing tricks are. We're conditioned to know what humans act like and how physics works and how gravity works when you're walking or running or moving. So when someone is sped up in their footage, it's so quick to tell.
And it looks so ridiculous.
It looks so
Well, it
ridiculous.
looks-
I was
cartoony.
watching it and I could hear the Benny Hill music playing in my
Yeah.
head. And it's like, this is supposed to be a serious moment. Like, this is do or die for these guys. They're literally face to face with the enemy, and I just hear.
There's sped up footage in a few of the Monster-thons. That's why I feel like it's not going to go away for a hot minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I just find it interesting that one of the more interesting cultural shifts I've found in movies is like back in the day, sped up footage meant like action, high intensity,
Yep.
audience on the edge of the seat. Nowadays, we look at it and we're like, that's fucking stupid and
Yep.
hilarious.
You know what the funny thing is, Mud? Sped up footage used to mean the high paced action. You know what The Matrix did? Made slow mo action.
Yep.
Slow-mo and John Wick, steady cam,
Yep.
long takes,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
like
Keanu Reeves keeps revolutionizing the industry.
it's interesting, because like I remember in like the early 2000s, people held up Bourne as like a standard of action, and that's a lot of hard cuts, quick cuts in the action to keep you like,
quick cuts in the action.
yeah, and it sucks.
What
Like
that
nowadays,
movie did for lazy action filmmakers was astounding.
it did.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Just Born Identity just to get a
It's
quick
not good.
tangent in, and I've heard people laud it as like a great action film. It sucks.
Yeah, it's not
Does
good.
suck.
It does suck. Like
There
the
are-
action is devastatingly bad.
There are select portions of shaky cam action in that movie that are good.
Yeah, but people hold it up as like a good thing that happened overall. The Bourne
Mm-hmm.
films.
Like filmmakers learned the wrong lessons and went, "Oh, this is a cheap, easy, quick way to hide the errors of our production by making it jarringly annoying." But sorry,
Yeah.
this isn't Western Front. We're trailing
Yeah.
off.
All right. Let's get back on track.
Let's
so-
talk about that scene. I want to get into that scene.
The sex part sucks.
Yeah,
The French women.
the women's
Yeah.
scene. This is
It-
another example of what one in this time period considered comedy.
Let's talk about the French
Comedy.
plantation in Apocalypse Now.
Okay.
Because it's the same fucking scene.
But good.
But
That scene is good.
the Apocalypse Now scene?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking. I will politely break with you on that because I have my own thoughts about Apocalypse
Oh,
Now.
you can see the struggle in Mud, who has it on his like top 10 movies of all time, saying, "I don't think that scene in Apocalypse Now is good."
It's
Well,
number
we
4.
talked about it when we reviewed Apocalypse Now.
We did.
I have my problems with it. I don't think it works, but I get what it means.
Yes.
But
But it's not like a piss poor comedy dumb scene.
to compare,
Yeah.
Paul and his buddies are heading upriver on the boat right now, and they're about to reach Marlon Brando's cult.
Mm-hmm.
And then they stop at the goddamn French plantation, and everybody gets a reset, and everyone takes a shower, and everyone gets to breathe. And I don't like that because I want torture and sadness the entire time. So Paul and his buddies are chilling in the river. They're bathing. They're naked. They're beating off into the stream, and then these girls run by, and they're like, hee hee hoo hoo, you're the enemy. Come plow my coochie. And then they do.
Yep.
And it
And they bring
goes
them
nowhere.
bread and wine.
It goes nowhere. It does nothing. Cool, they had sex. Whatever. Didn't need to be in the film. Could have
No,
cut it out
not at all.
entirely. And again, it's a weird reset for these guys where they get a slice of home, which honestly kind of undercuts Paul returning to his actual home. Later on in the film, about 20, 30 minutes later, he does go home and he finds he can't return to this life.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of that scene where Stanislaus is drinking and drunk is also bad.
It adds nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Because he's sitting there getting a reset of drink and camaraderie with one of his buddies, and I'm going to punch you because I'm drunk, and another bad portrayal of drunk. But it's just goofy.
It makes me go, really? Really? This film's missing 20 minutes, but we got this?
Yeah.
I want to know what those other 20 minutes were, because I
Probably
feel like
good
they
to
would have
see
been
you.
more worth my time.
Yep.
100%.
Exactly.
It's in movies like this where they take a character and they just break him down, just keep chipping away at his psyche and his mental fortitude. I hate when they do the reset. I hate when they do the pause. Here's something good to happen to you. I get that it's supposed to be undercut by the fact that bad things happen to him again, but I think it's more powerful if bad things just keep happening to him and he doesn't get that break, because the break is going to be his mental break when
think-
he fucking snaps.
To talk about your point too, I think not a full break like he's having, but you could do one good thing, like they get an extra bit of food, right? That extra
They did
food
do that.
thing, they get the extra food thing. If that was their break, they're still fucking shit out of luck, but at least they get something,
God,
a
that
little
is-
bit. You know
That
what
is
I
such
mean?
a fucked up scene too. The extra food bit. The only reason they get extra food is because half of their squadron died.
But imagine if that was the only break they got.
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, I get extra food, but it's because of
It's
a bad
at the cost
reason.
of the fact of
Yes.
Hans and Franz and Peter aren't here.
It's the break that the film. It's like a good thing. Like, yes, a good thing finally, because you can't just have bad things happen.
Yep.
But it's
You're
at
right.
the cost of something, and it adds to the film, and it adds to that torture of, even though there's good things happening, at what cost?
Have you guys seen John Malkovich's of Mice and Men, where he's Lenny?
No.
I think
No.
so. I think I
saw
watched it in school.
I was in school as well. I think.
Okay,
yeah.
so we watched it in the same
We
class.
probably did in the same class, but there's a sequence in it because that whole movie is just freaking George and Lenny having the worst time and just having terrible things.
Also
happen.
the book.
Also the book. Yep.
Also the book.
There's
yeah.
a sequence, the scene right before Lenny kills Candy's wife, which is arguably the lowest point of the movie before Lenny dies, would be, it's the sequence where George and Lenny and I think someone, like 3 or 4 other people at this table, George is like, oh, wow, we have some money for some reason. I forget exactly the plot, but it's a really uplifting thing where it's like George is thinking to himself, ooh, hey, if we move here and we do this, we can spend our here and we can get some things. We can be out of this rut we're in because we're in the Great Depression. We're finally going to move forward in life. And then Lenny kills the wife. To me, I really appreciate how it's just been depression, depression, depression. Ooh, some upside. And then this massive, like, sledgehammer right to their faces.
I see your point.
But that has the massive upside of against the plot of what they've been doing, and that's what their solution's supposed to be. The solution to the war isn't sex.
No, I agree. It's
Make
not
love, not war, Ian. Check fucking mate.
No, I agree. I'm not saying that that's how
Yeah.
what All Quiet did.
No,
It's not what All Quiet
I
did.
get what your point is, but I definitely come down on Ian's side where it's like the reason that hits hard is because that was their meal ticket. That was what was going to get them out of this. With the French horror scene, it's just like, this is a fun little kooky bit to
Yeah, I
distract
agree.
the audience. I think it would have been more powerful if we had had more build up to Paul's leave of absence, where he was like, I'm gonna make it, and then he gets home.
Could have had a scene with his mom or something.
Yep.
That would have been
More
way
scenes with his
impactful.
mom. He had a couple scenes with his mom, but maybe some more stuff,
Yeah.
That's really, you know what would have been good? Because his whole classroom signed up.
Yeah.
Maybe a scene where he meets his friend's parents and it's like, hey, where's my son? Oh yeah, he got his fucking legs blown off. You know, he's dead.
He has
Yeah.
no eyes.
I think it's really funny too because like this movie, if it weren't for those little details like that, this would be like a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree. This
This
movie's
movie-
fantastic.
When I was watching it, I'm like, man, this really reminds me of Apocalypse Now.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it has slightly less technical merit, and the scenes that are bad are worse, and there's less character interaction
Yeah.
that I really like from Apocalypse Now.
You know, like Apocalypse Now has some iconic characters. Outside of Paul and his CO, I really can't tell you
Paul
much.
and Stanislaus are the only two characters.
Paul
in
and
this movie.
Stanislaus, you know, Apocalypse Now, you've got
The whole boat.
Willard, you've
Yeah.
got Chief, you've got Clean, you've got Lance. Fucking Lance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Lance. Like, I would say Lance,
And even the main antagonist of the film,
Kurtz.
like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because the point of both movies is that war is bad. You know, we shouldn't
War is
always
hell.
War is hell. We
And
shouldn't
it's a
always do hell.
compliment on the human nature when it
Yeah,
comes to
right.
war.
Yep.
Right. So the difference being, I think that All Quiet is just basically, I don't want to say propaganda, but it's basically a message that is war is bad, never do war. Whereas Apocalypse Now, at the end of that movie, just kind of gives you the finger, metaphorically.
But that's also, think about it this way, that's optimistic 1930s America
Yep.
talking about the war to end all wars
Yep.
versus cynical
Vietnam, we lost this one, and it
1970s
was
America,
Yep.
Vietnam versus world, you know, because the simple fact of the matter is World War I and World War II, I would say they were conventional wars as well. It was country versus country. Vietnam was us interfering in basically a civil war. Like, there's a line, I'm going to make a really deep pull here. In Bad Times at the El Royale, there's a TV on talking about Vietnam, and the president says something along the lines of, well, it's really hard to get a ceasefire with a army that might not be able to get that order to all of its soldiers.
Yeah, that's very
You know,
true.
that's the difference there, and it's also something we're seeing with the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and Iran. This is not a conventional army that is ushered into platoons controlled by colonels who answer to generals who go up to a president or a prime minister or a king. These are insurrectionists.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that's really dumbing it down and definitely giving the finger to the Viet Cong in a way. But who fucking cares? That's not the point. Talking about just a broad comparison where I'm going to dumb this shit down and say something really stupid. But my point being,
No, I get what you're talking about.
warfare in World War I and World War II was a lot more
Conventional. It
conventional.
wasn't guerrilla warfare.
It wasn't guerrilla
Well,
warfare.
World War II had a little bit of blitzkrieg, which was technically guerrilla warfare.
Blitzkrieg, but that
But-
was still ordered blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
But my point is, you know, you still understood the hierarchy of how this works.
Yep.
You know, there were clear driving goals. and
Ranks. There were ranks.
There were ranks. There were orders to this shit. You know,
Yep.
like you knew who was in charge. You knew where to get them. You knew
Yep.
what the end goal was. You know, with World War II, it's like, oh, get to Berlin. It's capture the flag.
Yeah.
Get to Berlin.
Get to Berlin. Get to Stalingrad.
Yeah.
Whoever gets there first wins.
Yep.
That's what it was.
If the Germans got to Stalingrad, that war's over.
It was 100%, because then they can reroute all of the Germans on the Eastern Front back west, repel the American invasion, swing down to Italy, kick Britain's dick in, and they've won.
Done.
Meanwhile, America's split between two fronts.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the point is,
So, with that alternate history, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna give.
alternate history sucks, dude.
It
I
does.
hate people who are like, "Oh, I love reading alternate history." I'm like, "Why?" That's fan fiction of real life.
Exactly. I'm gonna give this an 8. I think this is so fucking solid, and
Yeah.
it truly is like a great movie that should be remembered, and it's easily my favorite of the 3 we've watched so far.
I agree. I also am gonna say 8. There's a lot of this movie is haunting, fantastically acted. It's interesting. There's a couple of technical flaws because it's like the fucking 30s, and some scenes that just kind of suck. But at the end of the day, it's still so enjoyable.
And I think if it weren't for those like the women's scene, if it weren't for stuff like that, it might just be like a
Yeah.
9 or a 10.
There's a lot of cuts between these men's exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
haunted, just dead, soulless faces.
I
It's
know.
just so amazing.
And like all the messages in those scenes between their dead soulless faces are perfectly conveyed visually.
visually.
Oh,
Oh
my
my
god.
That,
The
those
vi-
this movie could have been a silent movie, and I still would have got it there.
Right.
Yeah, I think so too. So I agree with what you guys are saying. This is easily my favorite of the 3 we've watched so far, but I'm going to go a point higher, and I'm going to say this is a 9 out of 10 film.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for those scenes with the women and just kind of muddling up the tone here and there, it would be a 10.
It's so good.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
You know, I would say of the three of us, I'm gonna wager that I'm probably the one who likes war movies the most.
I agree.
Considering I admittedly said
Ian
I don't really
admits
care
that he
about
hates
war
them.
movies.
Jake, you're so
I'm
on them.
in the middle on
No,
that.
it's-
You're indifferent.
I think I'm also in the middle, basically. But the really bad ones are really fucking bad.
Ian, I'm in the middle. Also, Ian, I hate every war film.
I don't have biases
I'm
against
kidding.
genres. I have biases for some genres, like Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good,
We're
but I'm
not-
going to enjoy it.
Point is, this is what I like about a good war film. A good war film isn't about the war or a battle. It's about the human condition in war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
And we talked about that during Apocalypse Now. And that's why I
Exactly.
really like Apocalypse Now. That's why I really like this movie.
like this Apocalypse Now, 1917. These are like
All
movies. These
fantastic.
are war movies where I'd point to and be like, "This is good war movie." You know, the Hacksaw Ridge. You know, good war movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah,
All right, guys. Well, now that we have more than two, what's your favorite? What's your least favorite?
oh, that's an easy one. Favorites All Quiet on the Western Front. Least favorites The Broadway Melody.
Favorite's All Quiet on the Western Front. Least favorite's Broadway Melody.
Ditto and ditto.
Yep.
Yeah. That's-
All right.
Yeah.
So what's up next, Jake?
Well, I'll tell you. You see, the next best and or worst picture, depending on who you ask. would be-
Cinnamon.
Nope. Cimarron.
Cinnamon.
Cinnamon.
Isn't that the lore book from Lord of the Rings?
No,
That's the
that's
Silmarillion.
Cimarron.
Yeah, I
Thank
know.
you. It's also not the spice you put on certain things called cumin. Cimarron is a cowboy movie.
That'll be very interesting.
It's
'cause-
interesting to me because it's 1931,
Yeah,
might
cowboy
be
genre to me is 50s and 60s.
Oh, yeah?
especially 60s.
We finna do this shit like this. It's like
Tell me about how Zeus may be from clay and lightning and rape.
I think it was just clay and lightning in this version.
Oh, come on. It's Zeus.
the war to end all wars.
The war to end all wars. Right after it ends. Let's do some war.
At least give me the chance to take out Ludendorff's operation myself.
Put me in, coach. I can do this.
No, Steve. We're bringing a dog into the war instead. His name is Bud. There's no rule that a dog can't stop World War One.
The gala could be perfect cover.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you over the fact that I'm Aries.
So World War II is the first post-Ares war in this timeline.
And it's one of the worst wars.
It's like maybe the worst war ever.
Get it? She's Jesus.
Oh my god, she's Jesus.
It is a Zack Snyder production.
Lying ass niggas in the punk